invite you to interact with us and continue on the chat and share your questions, your thoughts, your wisdoms, because the wisdom and your expertise is important to us as well as we have this conversation. And so we'll have conversations based on Khotso and Paul's reflections, and then we will go into a Q&A, question and answer session at the end. But also as we go through the conversations, we will pose some questions for you to reflect on. And as you can see, the first question that has been pasted into the chat is on Mentimeter, and it's an invitation to you, for you to reflect on and describe, using only one word, what disables municipalities or any institution that you are part of. So just one word in terms of what disables municipalities or institutions. So if you click on the link, then you'll see the Mentimeter question there. So we invite you to respond, and yes, only one word, and then later on we'll share what you have come up with. So also to say that we have our social media post tag is good governance can be. And it is a question. Good governance can be ... It could be the inclusion of communities in solving the challenges faced in municipalities. The conversation today on good governance and service delivery in municipalities is a discussion that we are setting forth to reflect on and give insight into the roles played by local government entities and its stakeholders. Stakeholders such as the mayor, municipalities, municipal managers, and those who lead the municipalities. But stakeholders also, and especially the communities that we serve. And how can we build stronger coalitions and collectively hold municipality leadership accountable? So let us invite Khotso now, and let us listen to the context and the invitation for all of us to imagine, dream into, visualize, and build the municipalities and the country we want to see. And as I hand over to Khotso, please continue to type into the chat and complete the Menti. So Khotso Skuman is the Chief Executive Officer of Kagiso Capital. He also heads the Kagiso Institute for Inner Work. And so I'm handing over to you, Khotso, to speak about creating a culture of accountability and service delivery, and the role of mayors, municipal managers, and those involved in leading and implementing for the service of communities. Over to you, Khotso.
Thank you, Meline, and thanks to our guests and people who have decided to join us on this webinar. This webinar is really going to be a conversation around issues of local government with a major focus around governance and service delivery in municipalities. We as a Kagiso group continues to reimagine a local government and municipalities that work. And that's why the tagline, it can be. We have absolutely no doubt in our mind that there is a need for us to work very hard in turning around municipalities, and we certainly can, as a country, do that successfully. I thought we should give you a brief intro on the business we are in as the KC Institute. I think the core business we are in as the Institute is to facilitate conversations which assist leaders to transform their character and consciousness and take responsibility for the effects their actions inflict on organizations, society, and the people they lead. It is amazing how leaders sometimes don't have an appreciation that decisions they made have long-term ramifications for societies and communities and the people they lead. And our core business is to create safe spaces for leaders to engage in this honest conversations of accountability around decisions they make that impact organizations they lead. We strongly believe that the time for brave, honest conversations in local government is now. I think any moment of delaying us having this honest conversations around how we turn local government around potentially could lead to the local government system completely imploding. And the danger is that we're going to have to spend billions and billions of rands in rebuilding local government. And unless we start engaging in those tough conversations and engaging those tough conversations now. And we also wanted to make the point that there are some basic things that have to happen if we are to turn around local government. And one of the basic things that have to happen is to make leadership in local government, particularly your mayors and your municipal managers, start confronting the realities they find themselves in. It's a bit concerning that we seem to have become so numb on how local government is delivering services to communities. And what you see on this picture, you travel throughout the country, this is what you find in communities. And I think unless local government leadership start having this confronting conversations around the reality of local government, we're postponing the inevitable. And the more we postpone it, the local government will certainly implode. And when it implodes, this country is in big trouble. And this is just a sign of what is happening, for example, in Makana. Right? Communities have decided to take their municipality to court. And we know of the number of court cases that community stakeholders were successful in challenging local government. But this is what we find in municipalities. And it's a bit scary that local government leadership never have a conversation around this. I remember when we facilitated a conversation in one of the municipalities, community members were saying they actually are extremely worried that a mayor or a municipal manager could on a daily basis pass a dump, and that doesn't say anything to them as the leaders of municipalities. And that's where the scary part about people not having the confronting the real conversations at the state of local government. This barometer is quite an interesting one, and I think it comes from Business Tech. I think we extracted this from a report that they had. It shows you how in big trouble is local government. You can see the red representing dysfunctional municipalities, and the orange representing municipalities at high risk. But the writing on the corner left is what is more scary. That shows that municipalities that are under financial distress is 163 municipalities. And we have municipalities with unfunded budgets. That's even more scary, because this means that people have a budget that is not supported by revenue, but people spend. And that's why you have a lot of municipalities that are carrying huge amounts of deficits. And you have a lot of municipalities, and you will see the numbers that the AG as a report shared, the 2021 report, that shows the amount of unfruitful expenditure that municipalities are carrying. And this is quite scary. And unless we really deal with these issues, we're about to see the local government system in this country completely collapsing. And when that collapses, we are in serious trouble as a country. And this again really shows you that and unless we get local government right, you're going to have civil society organizations, that is business, church organizations, and NGOs will start thinking of how they go to court and ask the court to allow them to administer the payment for services, and they will take the responsibility. And if that starts to happen, then you must know that your local government system is completely gone. And you can see the placard that has been held on the bottom right screen that says community must run Makana municipality. And I think that's what communities are beginning to think about. How do they go to court and demand the court to allow them to take responsibility in administering municipalities? And I think that's a bit it's a scary situation, but I don't think we're far from that scenario. This is another big issue that people don't have a conversation on, this is the AG's report around issues of unauthorized, irregular, unfruitful expenditure. You can see the Free State. I mean, that numbers runs at about 3.5 billion rand, and you can look at all the other municipalities. And it is actually what makes it more scary is that you have municipalities that on an annual basis, you have that unfruitful expenditure increasing on an annual basis. And I think, and unless we have the conversations and people are held accountable for this, you're putting municipalities at huge risk. We burned money in municipalities and we pocket money in municipalities, and people are still not held accountable. The interesting thing about how municipalities spend and without people accounting is this ostrich picture. That's how municipal leaders operate. They've dug their head in the sand and hoping things will change. You know what happens? Things happen. And they happen gradually, and then suddenly. And that's what we find ourselves in municipalities. Those deficits and over expenditures and misappropriation of money have just not happened. I mean, they happen gradually, and you find a municipality at the end that is completely broke. Fine. And it is because we've been ignoring the signs and being scared to get into the conversation around how do we ensure this does not continue. And we thought we should share with you the approaches that the Institute has developed that we facilitated in other institutions in education and in local government on how we were able to make leadership in those institutions really engage in brave, accountable conversations. And I thought we should probably throw you with these 3 questions as we go and explain some of the frameworks, 2 of the frameworks we've developed. We've developed a couple of frameworks that will facilitate these brave conversations and assist leaders in those institutions take some accountability. But we thought we should leave you with these 3 questions to think about. And I know that the chairman the facilitator is going to raise some of the questions that they would like you guys to start responding to. And I think the first question is really a question that we want you to reflect on. What are the tough issues impacting the performance of municipalities to date? If you are a municipal manager, if you are a mayor, the question to you is, what are the tough issues that impact your municipality? Right? The second question is, what conversations are you avoiding regarding the performance of the municipality? Are there other conversations that we all know that we can't get involved in those conversations, but we know it's important for us to engage in those conversations? And the third question is, what has been the economical, emotional, intellectual cost to the municipality, probably more important to yourself as a leader, to yourself as the mayor, to yourself as the municipal manager, to yourself as a councillor, and to yourself as a senior management team member of the municipality. And at the cost at an individual level for not dealing with the real issues. And how many of us are carrying these things year after year, year after year, year after year, and we see the municipalities going down the drain. This is the framework that we think municipalities run around this framework. It doesn't make sense for us. And this is the philosophy of the framework. It says that people succeed because of the organizations in which they work. And we fundamentally disagree with the statement. This statement suggests that accountability starts at the organizational level and it goes to the team and then the individual. We strongly believe that's just wrong. It doesn't make sense. The philosophy that we always take to local government and institutions we facilitate, it is this philosophy. Right? It's a philosophy that says it starts with you. it starts at an individual level, right? If individuals in an organization, there is no way team members can be held to account, and there's no way the organization can build an accountability culture. And for us, I think the philosophy is a very simple one. Organizations succeed because of the people who work in them. It's amazing that when there's a problem in a municipality, the mayor, the municipal manager, and their teams never appreciate that they own part of that reality. If it is dysfunctional, you own part of that dysfunctionality. If it is performing, you own part of that performance. And for us, we think this is a philosophy that we assist organizations to deal with, on how you make individual team members start taking accountability, and for them to appreciate accountability starts with them and not with the team. And that's build the culture of accountability in organizations. The second big issue that we assist municipalities to engage with is the culture that exists in municipalities, in local government. And we've got these two frameworks that usually are a big issue of conversation when we facilitate the conversations for municipalities, where we facilitate this conversation. One, it's a pseudo culture. It's amazing how pretense in local government is a big issue. We worked in a municipality in one of the municipalities in the Eastern Cape, and we had a situation where the municipal manager and the mayor for over 5 to 3 years, right, were just not seen eye to eye, right? But things just continued, and because the municipal manager the mayor cannot hold the municipal manager accountable, because the municipal manager is probably connected to leadership in the region, right? And people just pretend because they don't want to rock the boat. And people are polite, and nothing is wrong. The big issue around this issue is that you have a lot of people who become passengers at municipality. In one of the institutions, it was in the education space in the Free State, where we facilitated this conversation. They had a say where they say, you have people in government or in municipalities that get their salary, right? And you've got people who earn their salary. And I think the big question is, how do we make everyone in the municipality to appreciate they have to earn their salary? Because if you don't do that, you're going to have a lot of people who come to work because they get their salary. Whether they add value or not, it becomes immaterial. And you've got another chaos culture within institutions. And we try as hard as we can to make leadership confront this reality, where there's politics that are playing, people are there to build empires. And I think it's unfortunate the space is a space that local government is utilized for people to build a political base. And it's a big issue. People blame, nobody takes responsibility in that situations. The worst culture in local government is a culture of entitlement. Right? People believe that they're entitled to work for local government, even if they don't add value. And I think it's a big challenge that I think we need to manage. And I think we're in the business of making institutions begin to realize they need to build a culture of interdependence and community, where people are allowed the space to become vulnerable, and also people are affirmed. The one reason why I think it is important to start building a culture where we affirm people in the local government space, you're going to avoid a situation where a senior manager is being asked by a councillor or a mayor to do something that the senior manager knows is absolutely wrong. Right? If you don't affirm your people, they will do as they're told, and they will say, but it is not me. I was told by the councillor, I was told by the mayor to do this. And I think it is quite important to begin to build and affirm your people to be able to know that they must take accountability for the performance of the institution. But what is quite important if we talk about culture, I think Patrick Whitesell makes the point that you can have the right strategies in the world, but if you have the wrong culture, fine, you're dead. And you've got Peter Decker that says culture is strategy for breakfast. And we at the Institute actually fundamentally believe that leadership is strategy and culture for dinner. If leadership does not take accountability for where the institution is, right, you have a fundamental problem. Culture and strategy doesn't work. Right? And this leads us to this slide. Right? The mayor, the municipal manager need to know they create the culture. They are the culture, right? The big problem with the politics of local government is when people think when they're in positions of power and authority, they have no responsibility to account. And it's actually the opposite. The more you occupy those positions, the more there is an expectation for you to take responsibility and account for the performance of the municipality. And I think it is important for municipal managers and mayors to know that they create the culture, they are the culture. A municipal manager is not a politician. A municipal manager is an administrator. When garbage is not picked up for months and months and months, the municipal manager must be held accountable. Right? And the municipal manager must be able to hold his teams accountable that are supposed to be looking, ensuring that those things happen. When ward committees don't work, right, the mayor and councillors must be held accountable. And I think the big issue that I think politicians in local government probably miss the point, and it's just sad that ward committees that are supposed to be structures, and I think Paul is going to talk more about it, ward committees that are supposed to be structures that's supposed to partner local government in the governance of community processes, fine, are used as platforms for councillors that have aspirations of becoming seasoned politicians, either from local government to province and national. Right? And it's just a sad situation. But I think it is important for mayors to know when ward committees don't work, mayors and councillors must be held accountable. We facilitated a conversation in one of the municipalities. Like I indicated, you had the situation where the municipal manager and the mayor were just had a relationship of talk and cat, a dog and cat. And I had this one-to-one conversation with them. And I said to them, but you guys are aware that if the situation doesn't work, one of you has to leave. And I think it was amazing that for the very first time in the conversation, the councillors and senior management team told both the manager, the municipal manager and the mayor that they are the ones that are holding the turnaround of this municipality back. And I think in the one-to-one conversation, I had to be as frank as I can. And I said to them, but you guys know that if this thing doesn't turn around, one of you has to leave. And I think the processes unfolded. And I think fortunately or unfortunately, one of them had to leave. And that's what happened. And I think it is quite important for us to start having this accountability relationships, particularly at leadership level. We as the Institute, right, are really in the business of assisting organizations to build a culture of accountability, right, to engender a commitment to people accounting for where their institutions are. We're quite strong in building teams that work together, but teams that also hold each other accountable. And our interventions are always associated with an intention of improving the performance of institutions that we facilitate. We strongly believe that you make organizations perform because you create spaces for people to have the tough conversations holding each other accountable. And I think we've seen it happen in institutions where we facilitate this brave conversations. Maybe as a way of really closing, I wanted to show you, for you guys to reflect again on those tough questions. But I think for us, the conversations that has to happen at local government is conversations around how do individuals start taking accountability? How do we create a culture where people know that the culture here is people will be held accountable for non-performance and people will be rewarded for absolute performance. And that's what happens in institutions that work. And yes, thank you very much for the opportunity, Melin, and thanks to the participants. I'm looking forward to the conversation going forward.
Thank you so much, Kagiso. And absolutely, it can be. So your reflections around leadership and the call to action is for leadership to show up fully. I think I like your comment about strategy and leadership and how leadership is the foundation of the systemic change we want to see. And the invitation is to reflect on our own roles as individuals and then how we show up in the systems that we are part of. The systems are made up of us, so we can't blame the system, we are the system. And also your reflection around it starts with you. And that calls us to do our own inner work and to be honest with ourselves. So the first honest conversation is what we need to have with ourselves. How are we honest? How do we own and how are we part of the results that we are seeing in municipalities, in governance, and across the institutions as well, business and other civil society entities. So really an invitation to reflect on our role and how we're going to start shifting the system, shifting the narrative. And what realities do we all need to confront and what do we need to do differently? So as Kagiso said, once again, the Mentimeter question that we are putting up is, what is the conversations that you are avoiding regarding the performance of municipalities and institutions? And so for the first question, as you see on the screen, the question, sorry, this.
Sorry, Paul, can you please unmute there? Thank you.
I think there was a sound issue. So the responses are corruption, lack of accountability, I think it's unresponsiveness, poor leadership, politics, fear, unaccountability, and resource entitlement. So also some of what you said also in terms of what disables municipalities and institutions. And so, as I said, thank you very much for sharing those words, more than one in some cases. And as Kagiso asked us, what conversations are we avoiding regarding the performance of the municipality or institutions that we are part of? So we invite you to type into the Mentimeter or into the chat and respond to that question. We continue to invite you to use our hashtag good governance can be. And it's also as you type and as you reflect, let's dream and continue to envision what good governance can be as we continue to dig into and unearth what the issues are within governance and local governance. And so with that, I would like to introduce Paul Smith. Paul is the executive head of Kagiso's local governance support pillar, and he has consulted into many local government spheres with municipalities and stakeholders. Paul speaks about radical collaboration, and that is a call for us to collaborate and hold at the center of this collaboration the people we want to serve. So over to you, Paul, and you will be speaking about strengthening local government and promoting community-centric development. Thank you, Paul.
Well, thank you, Marlene. Well, I'll just share my presentation. Well, Kagiso has consulted into the local government space, into the community space for many years. And our particular focus has been to support municipalities. And over the last several years, we've been focusing on revenue management support and data management support, with the intention of building capacity within municipalities to protect their revenue streams and then to look at opportunities to increase their revenue streams. Probably 4 years ago, we did, through a little bit of introspection, we sort of started to realize or notice a trend in the fact that despite the technical support going to municipalities, very little sustainable or systemic change took place. And this work that we're doing in the revenue management space just continued to return in the same institutions that we had serviced before. And so the trust challenged us to relook at our focus and to find alternative ways, because ultimately we want to impact marginalized communities and have an impact on socioeconomic development within marginalized communities. And so a number of years ago, we embarked on a journey to pilot a new approach in municipalities and selected a particular municipality. And so much of the evidence that you see today, or the information you see today, is as a result of that pilot over the last 4 years, where we've seen significant returns on our investment there and changes within the institution and within community. When we set out initially with this reiterated approach, we wanted to focus on municipal capacity, but instead of revenue management being the key focus, we wanted to focus on the local economic development department, on the indigent management department, and on the community engagement department. And in doing so, we embarked on a status quo assessment on the municipality. And it was after the status quo that we really realized that providing technical support into an institution that is not ready to adopt change is really fruitless. And you can train people until you're blue in the face, unless they're ready to adopt the training and embrace it and make the changes that are required. It wasn't worthwhile doing. And so we reiterated our approach again to focus on creating an enabling environment for better functionality, or better or more development, or more sustainable development. And that environment was not only within the municipality, because we also realized as we approached community, that community was polarized and dysfunctional, and civil society was inactive. And within civil society, although everybody recognized that something needed to change, very few people could agree on what that change should be and what it should look like and how it should be implemented. And we also noticed significantly, despite all the challenges that Kagiso has raised in the institution, we found that the gap between municipality and community was growing exponentially. People were becoming less satisfied. And in fact, in most cases, in many of the cases, we found that people were becoming resilient to some of the dysfunctionality in municipalities. But this was a problem in its own right, because people became complacent to some of the critical issues that were facing their communities, and that was a problem. So we changed approach again, and we started focusing on the enabling environment. And this enabling environment, we termed radical collaboration. And I just want to take you through the process of what we set out to achieve and how we achieved it in this particular municipality. But before I get there, I just want to reflect on a statement made by the president. And he said, "We are engaged in a battle for the soul of our country, and we must not be defeated." And I think for everybody that's listening to this webinar today, when we talk about your soul, it could mean many things to many people. But the soul is really a personal thing. It's how we turn up every day, how we appreciate what we have, and how we interact with each other to make the changes we desire, and how we collaborate. And so we set out to try and change the soul of our pilot municipality. And that was quite a difficult process. But nevertheless, we started having conversations, having dialogue with leaders, both municipal and community, and starting to identify people who were ready to adopt a new collaborative approach to local governance. And as we spent more time communicating with people, we found that we started gaining momentum. And before I get on to what that momentum looked like and what it created, I want to just reflect on one of the key processes that took place in the municipality. And we did a scenario planning exercise with the community and municipal stakeholders. And it was interesting that the two most influential elements that would affect the future of the municipality were political will and the ability for all stakeholders to collaborate. And this was a validation for us to and emphasize that we were on the right path. And whilst we were talking about the future, we also understood, and many of you have been in webinars where people are talking about the future, that the future is impossible to predict. But what we can do is build capabilities that enable us to cope with multiple futures. And one of the capabilities we found was critical in the municipal context was the ability for people to collaborate. And I'll explain collaboration in a bit more detail as we move forward. But I want to talk about collaboration in a slightly different context so that we can get a picture of maybe what collaboration looks like. And I'm not a very good dancer, but I've chosen tango, the tango as an example. And the reason I've chosen this one is because the attributes of the tango are really relevant to our local government and community environment. So what does the tango require in order to be a good dance? Well, it has to be, the people doing the dance have to feel secure in their partners and their collaboration partners. They need to be very precise in terms of execution. They need to be smooth in terms of how they navigate through difficult times. They need to be gentle with each other and appreciate each other. They need to be patient and understand that both partners collectively have to participate in the dance. They are adaptable to change. They need to be smart in terms of how they choreograph their movements. They need to be elegant in how they execute. They need to be in rhythm with each other. They need to be respectful of one another. They need to be protective of one another and support each other. They should be allowed to be spontaneous. They also can be unintentional, efficient, and aware. And most of all, they need an important dance floor on which to practice. For our pilot project, we identified our tango dancing partners, and they are the municipality and civic coalition. And before these two parties could be brought together, we need to work extensively with each party to prepare them for this difficult journey of transformation. And based on the project we implemented, we came up with the following framework. And I'll give you some anecdotal evidence of success as we move through this framework. The two stakeholders we identified, municipal stakeholders and non-government stakeholders. We realized very early on that because of the mandate of local municipalities, it was impossible for local sustainable development to take place without municipalities. And we also realized with the capacity of municipalities being potentially at an all-time low and performance being at an all-time low, it was impossible for municipalities to implement sustainable development without augmenting their skills and abilities by engaging with the community. So what did we find in the municipality? I'm not going to rehash what Putzel's spoken about. We found levels of dysfunctionality, non-performance, and this had happened for many years. Inconsistency in terms of leadership and management, and so the municipality was in reasonable disarray. But nevertheless, what did we want to achieve from our collaborative approach in developing municipalities? We wanted to really focus on leaders. We wanted to focus on the leaders that have influence over the various departments in the municipality, and we wanted to build efficiencies. We wanted leaders to understand that their ability to collaborate internally and break down the silos in the municipality and build efficiency was really important. And in order to achieve this, we embarked on some empowerment retreats, having honest conversations, confronting reality, and leadership development. Within the community, when we arrived, we found a totally dysfunctional community. In fact, that many of the stakeholders in community referred to themselves as a circular firing squad, where people could not agree on how to collaborate and implement the change they desired. Some decided that litigation was the way, others decided that protest was the way, and others decided that collaboration was the way. And so we set out to try and build a cohesive stakeholder forum that was apolitical and that could hold fast and collaborate with local government. And in order to do that, we engaged in dialogue. We hosted a couple of retreats. We had some honest conversations with individuals and confronted reality. And we focused on leadership development because leaders can influence the way the community thinks. And then once there were green shoots in both these environments, we then set out to pull the two together and create a collaborative forum where people shared value, where people volunteered, where people felt passionate about issues. And this collaborative environment, and more specifically, the stakeholder cohesive environment, adopted a distributive leadership model and a constitution. The distributed leadership model meant that people could lead initiatives that improved community without being leaders in the community, only because they were passionate in a particular cause. And so in the stakeholder coalition, we found several clusters forming: food security clusters, education clusters, security clusters, health clusters, communication clusters. And specifically during COVID, we again had confirmation that collaboration was a powerful tool for transformation in municipalities. And collaboration around food security during the onset of COVID and the lockdown was that the civic coalition provided a structured, organized environment that could support marginalized communities with food that was desperately needed during COVID. And this, again, for Kagiso, was validation that collaboration is powerful, and especially when people are committed and passionate about the outcome of their collaborative intent. So once the collaboration forum was in place and people started communicating, we started, in order to, and I'll take you back a little bit, because we took some of the local issues, which we used as a preliminary dance floor in which to start fostering relationships and building collaboration between community stakeholders and the municipality. And some of these issues were building indigenous strategies, local economic development strategies, community engagement strategies. And for the first time, the municipality invited community into their strategy planning sessions to share their perspective on what the future should look like. And this was a really important process where people started mending relationships, respecting each other, and contributing meaningfully to the future of the municipality. Once this process had taken place, we found that we had reasonably common accepted development strategies for the area, and we then the community and the municipality selected implementation mechanisms, and we started seeing benefit for citizens. The important part is that the civic organization was so committed to collaboration that they employed a program director to run the collaborative environment. And this was a huge step in the right direction, because implementation mechanisms are always a key issue going forward. Who's going to implement it? Community have jobs and are working, and the municipality is not an implementing agent for many of the socioeconomic development issues, but an enabler for improvement. And so as we move forward, we've seen significant value in the education clusters and the food security clusters. There's research being done on food security and how to address food security, how to address equality in education, and also looking at local economic development. In fact, the collaborative model enabled some significant projects to materialize where 1,700 local unemployed youth have been employed to assist the municipality and citizens to clean up the municipality, fix potholes, collect litter, and repair some damage to infrastructure. So significant results have materialized from the collaboration. And interesting as well, as momentum grows, more people tend to join. But it is really critical during this collaborative process to balance the need for active projects and change whilst dialogue continues. Because many people want to be action orientated, but we've got to be very careful about being too action orientated, because sometimes action is the enemy of thought, and we need slow thinking in the process of creating sustainable change. So how do we change the way we think, and how do people make the transformation from being really polarized to starting to collaborate? Well, when we first arrived, many people, both in the municipality and in community, were ego system-centric thinkers. They were only interested in making decisions that suited themselves, with themselves at the center of the universe. And often these solutions were solutions that nobody really wanted, and that didn't make a significant difference to the broader community. And so we had to start transforming people to move from ego system-centric thinkers to ecosystem-centric thinkers. And ecosystem centric thinkers are people that are comfortable in communal thinking, and to realize the exponential improvement in the quality of our thinking and ideation and solutions, and the possible impact for community benefit. And so this behavior change doesn't happen overnight. It's about people doing some introspection and thinking about how they contribute to the downfall or the success of an environment. And it means that people need to have an open mind, an open heart, and an open will, and not to hold your own perspective too dearly, but to be open to listen to other people's perspectives for greater outcomes for community. This, for some people, is easier than others, and we believe that as momentum is created and benefit is derived from collaboration, more people will start join the collaborative movement. Closing the gap between the municipality and community has been quite difficult, as once relationships are broken down, one has to really work hard at rebuilding trust and respect between the parties. It's quite difficult to be in a court litigating against each other and then the next day sit around the table to collaborate around solutions. But we have some ideas of how this can happen. And it needs to start with dialogue. We need to connect before content. We need to recognize that the individual that we need to collaborate with is a person who has the same or potentially the same aspirations as we do, and is willing to contribute to the benefit of society. We need to, and this means we've got to fix people. We need to fix the soul of the community and how people think about each other before we can start fixing issues in our community. And this means our relationships need to build. It's easy to confront issues in the way Kotso was talking about, confronting reality and harsh conversations, if there's a foundational relationship that allows you to have those safe conversations or those harsh conversations in a safe environment, because everybody believes that they have the same intention, ethical intention in terms of supporting the community. Create a shared value for all stakeholders. Stakeholders need to see, and I'll give you an example. I went into a restaurant in this municipality, and whilst having a meal, the restaurant owner came up to me and said, I don't care if the municipality works or doesn't, because I've got a borehole and I've got solar energy. But what they didn't realize is that in 3 years down the line, the patrons of that could afford to come to that restaurant would have left the town and their business would have been abandoned. Even though they had electricity and power and were self-sufficient, they would have had nobody to come and enjoy the food that they were producing. And so once I had this conversation with the restaurant owner, they took a slightly different perspective on how they could change their perspective and contribute to the solution as opposed to being part of the problem. Because polarization and self-sufficiency is part of the problem, not the solution. Achieving this requires that we also adopt collaborative behavior as individuals, because as Kagiso referred to, it starts with the leader, it starts with the individual. How do I turn up every day to either work or a meeting or a dialogue or to confront serious issues? So what is collaborative behavior? I'll quickly take you through it. Well, as I've said, you must be the change that you wish to see in the world. So these are some key principles we should consider when we want to be collaborative. Our intention must be collaborative. That means we don't hold our own opinions too dear. We are non-defensive about criticism or the fact that people have different ideas to what we have. And we commit to mutual success and relationships for the greater good of community. The next thing we need to do is we need to be open. We need a climate of honesty and openness that allows people to feel safe to voice an opinion. Too often in our meetings, they're dominated by autocratic people who don't allow for others to voice an opinion and don't respect others' opinions. We need to change this. We need to be more open and invite people into our space to think differently, because it's only then that we get that exponential value and the quality of our ideation. Self-accountability. We have to take responsibility. Kagiso mentioned this as well, and we have to be accountable, but not only for our own actions that are intended. We need to be accounted for unintended consequences as well, because those consequences are also from our action. And let's not shy away from self-accountability. Awareness of self and others. We need to be very respectful and aware of what others are feeling and what others are experiencing. And part of our process is deep sensing, which is allowing people to really understand the root cause of issues and what it means for certain sectors of our community to not have water or electricity, or to live in poverty, or to live in a sea of litter. And in order for us to realize the importance of a word, sometimes we have to be very aware of what that means to others. We need to be problem-solving orientated and focus on negotiation. We need to negotiate our way through inevitable conflict in a way that builds relationships rather than undermines them. When we're negotiating, we need to make sure that we're focusing on the issues and not on our own egos or our own agendas or our narrow constituency agenda. We're focusing on the improvement for the broader community and the benefit to broader community, and more specifically, marginalized communities. So at the end of the day, as leaders in our institutions, whether it's the municipality or our NGOs or our businesses or just our communities or our churches, it's our choice as leaders how we pitch up. Do we want to create turbulence? Do we want to be part of the problem? Do we want to polarize? Do we want to protest and divide people? Do we want to use social media to drive a wedge between communities because of our narrow agenda to foster our own narcissistic leadership ambition? Or do we want to allow the sun to shine for everybody and create communities of prosperity? And that's a choice we make every day when we wake up, how we want to pitch up in our environment. So from the pilot project, we've derived a model that focuses on small town rejuvenation with emphasis on radical collaboration, and it has 4 elements to it: the situational awareness and deep sensing and analysis and understanding. That's not for us, that's for local stakeholders. We then want to focus on the ability of municipalities to collaborate and empower municipalities to do so, feel vulnerable and face communities. And we also want to make sure that community stakeholders are also empowered and collaborate to collaborate with the municipality to add value to the solution and not to exacerbate the problem. And then we want to mobilize stakeholders. We believe that with a critical mass that's mobilized with the right intention, the benefits will be significant. Some of the benefits we can expect from this are integrated local governance structures, which means that increased levels of accountability for our leaders, pooling of skills and resources, community-centered development, which is really important. At the moment, much of our development is driven by the municipality, and it's not community-centered because community engagement is not a reality. High quality of ideation. 1 and 1 equals 3. The ability to implement the change that you desire as stakeholders and community stakeholders. And this is really important because if we don't achieve this, we can expect much of the same. The time for change is now. Every year we see the number of municipalities decreasing, poverty in South Africa and unemployment and the dependency on social grants is increasing. Municipalities are becoming less functional. And so if we don't act now, what is the opportunity cost? Where will we see ourselves in 5 years' time? We as leaders in our municipalities need to make some very clear and concise decisions now to act and change the current status of our communities and municipalities. And we believe from Kagiso this can only happen through radical collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. As Mankodi said in the chat, it's a captivating presentation. So thank you very much for that. It's so great to listen and reflect. And one of the questions from, I think it was Simon, asking, and I'm going to read as it is here, it seems from the presentation that you already had motivated people, aspiring change makers within the municipalities. And the question is, were these officials? And was there a process for grooming more passionate people? So what is that process for grooming passionate people? And what about municipalities where there don't seem to be any motivated or capable officials? So that's the question from Simon. And we'll come back to more questions. There's a lot of questions popping up in the chat. But I also just to say that I really appreciated your reflection on the ecosystem, our egos, and how we need to shift to the ecosystem. What is the ecosystem that we want to change? And this invitation feels like an invitation into servant leadership. How do we show up for those we serve? And so using radical collaboration as a mechanism to systemically influence the way communities and government engage and ideate towards solving local issues is such an important aspect. Within our work with bridging leadership, it's very similar, that building trust towards collaboration, building connection and connection before content is so important. We can only do together if we have good relationships with each other. So thank you for all your reflections, Paul. The Mentimeter is up on the screen and you can see it there. So the question was, what conversations are you avoiding regarding the performance of the municipality and institutions? The notion of self-centeredness, I think absolutely, oh, I see the screen's going back here, thank you. Self-centeredness, and I think, as you said, narcissism, the ego system that we focus on and not our larger communities we have to serve. The role of skilled, educated residents and the role that they have to play in ensuring municipal accountability. So as citizens of the municipalities that we live in, what is our role? How skilled are we? How educated are we to hold